Welcome to the Young Hearts Run Free podcast. Karen Webber. How are you doing, Karen?
Yeah, I'm all right. I've got wine to hand, so we're all good.
We weren't going to mention that, but there you go. 10 seconds in, and we're good to go.
Well, to be fair, I'm laying out the foundations before we even get going. Most people that know me will expect nothing less, to be completely honest with you.
And
Very astute.
we're looking very forward to those people who know you enjoying this episode. However, what about those people who don't know you, Karen Webber? Can you please furnish us with your background? Who the hell is Karen Webber? Let's go with that.
Well, she's a bit of a nobody, really, to be honest with you. Everybody should probably sit down with a decent cup of tea or something much stronger by this point in time, to be fair. So when we're talking from a running perspective, I stupidly accepted a place in London Marathon in 2009. From the job that I was working in at the time, we had a charity foundation. I happened to be chair of the London committee. So I should have known that when I applied for one of our charity places, I would get it. And I went from 0 to marathon distance in about 8 months because I'm an idiot. I was still woefully unprepared, I have to be honest. But as part of that, I joined the Runners World Forums. This was back in 2009. So it was when Runners World Forums were really kind of high profile. They were really in use, and Facebook and social media and stuff was still not anywhere near the scale that it is now. As part of completing, I can't say running, completing London in 2009, I utilised the support of the Runners World Forum checkpoint that they put in at mile 17 at Mudshoot. And I met an awful lot of people through those forums through 2008 into 2009, who I'm still really fortunate now to still call friends. So 16 years down the line, coming up to 17, we're still in touch, we still chat, all of that sort of thing. I decided I was a bit rubbish at running after that and kind of laid off it, but I really loved the support side. So I went up to Mudshoot for the next couple of years and ended up actually coordinating it for a couple of years. I took it on from the guy that had been doing it because it's actually quite a lot of work to do with picking up special needs stuff as it was from the expo and stuff like that. And then I handed it over to someone else. In the meantime, I've gone through a relationship breakup. So I needed something to keep myself busy. I was living in Chatham in Kent at the time. And I got talking to one of the guys that I got to know through both Runners World, and there's another website called Fetch Everyone. I don't know if you guys have come across it. It's run by a fabulous guy called Ian. Sandra and Ian Beattie know him quite well. I think he went to their wedding. Fetchies are amazing people. And I got in touch with David, who had his own events in Milton Keynes around this random little lake called Caldicott, putting on half marathon and marathon distance events. And there was one weekend I was at a loose end and I went up and I was like, I messaged him. I said, how about if I come up, I'll bring my camera and I'll pop along. And the weather was epic. It was absolutely biblical, absolutely hooning it down with rain. It was ridiculous. And he had people still out on the run course from the morning marathon, whereas he needed to get people sorted for the afternoon. So I said, I'll tell you what, why don't you go in and do registration? I'll take the clipboard and I'll manual time people in. I mean, this is 2012, so it's still, watch and a clipboard and a pen, and it's 7.5 laps of a lake in Milton Keynes. Ultimately, it's not huge numbers of people either, as it's a much smaller event. And he was like, that would be amazing. And I didn't get rid of the clipboard for another 4 years. I basically ended up at nearly every single one of his events through to 2016. So I ended up acting as Fox's race director at Enigma Running for 4 years, I think it was. And then across that period of time, I ended up working, volunteering with an awful lot of other race directors. So Mark Cockbain has always been one of my heartlands. Centurion I did a bit with back in their early days, as well as me being fairly wet behind the ears on the circuit. Saxons, Vikings, Normans, Phoenix, an awful lot of events, just because it kept me occupied. It gave me something to do. It got me out the house. I stopped with Enigma in 2016. I've had to have a couple of operations that year, which took me a little bit out of commission. So I thought, all right, I know, I'll take a little bit of a step back. And then I met my husband, or now husband, who happened to work in event timing, which had always been the standing joke with all of the guys that ran with Enigma over those 4 years. Well, you never meet anyone, Karen, unless he's as involved with race events as you are. And then I did. So it's kind of gone from bad to worse since then. But I've always been involved in race events for the last, well, yeah, 2012, so at least 12, 13 years, really, taking out London. I've done a bit of running of my own. I've done 11 marathons in total across 4 different continents, because I've done Tokyo, I've done a couple in America, obviously Europe stuff, but yeah, it's not, I'm not the world's most natural runner. I very much dislike it, and I don't really want to run, actually. I prefer being my side, but I have experienced that being very much back of the pack, and I know what it's like to not be at the sharp end. I know what it takes to be out there for a long time on foot. So I haven't done an ultra, but I know how long it takes and what it takes to complete an event in a fairly significant period of time. So yeah, that was a lot. It was a bit of a brain dump, to be fair. I should probably give a shout out to the Pirate Ship of Fools as well, actually, because I know them through the Runners World forums. They're basically, well, I'm not sure which way round they describe themselves, triathletes with an alcohol problem or alcoholics with a triathlon problem. It's one way round or t'other, but they're still very much on the scene, and they've been a foundation through every interaction that I've had with the race world, to be honest, because most people on Runners World were vaguely involved with the Pirates as well, and they're instantly recognisable at race events, at triathlons or at marathons and stuff. Chances are there will be some black and yellow out there, because it's a yellow jersey with black skull and crossbones on. But they're an amazing bunch of people. They're brilliant.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that introduction. What's your favourite marathon out of all the ones you've done?
That I've done or completed.
Yeah.
Because they are very much completed. Little Rock in Arkansas was incredible. Mostly because the medal was the size of my head. But actually, it's the American marathons are like nothing else. They are incredible. In the UK, I mean, London is the best party in the world. I'm originally a London girl, even though I've moved around a lot and don't necessarily sound like it. But London is a massive party from start to finish. Although, actually, no, let's not say start to finish, because that bit through the island is not really. Yeah, I think, those would be my favorite. Tokyo was incredible, but I think that was more because it was the city.
Mm.
And the city is amazing, and it stole a piece of my heart when I was out there, and it's on my list to go back. But yeah, I think, Little Rock, I think, even though I was a bit broken because I've been at Tokyo the week before.
Bloody hell. We've not spoke about this, but we should mention it at this point, that if you go to Tokyo next year, you might bump into Stephen. This is our Tokyo turning Japanese season, so brilliant.
Sure is. 13 weeks on Sunday.
It is. It's a fabulous event, and you will love it. And when I did it, I mean, this is long time ago though, I think 2014, 2015, they had these massive rakes, so you don't have the issues that you have at like London and some of the other big marathons, the big mass participation events, with the bottles that are all in the way from the aid stations. They had these massive rakes that they were just pulling them all in out of the road and onto the side. It's just, and it's fairly constant, super aware. I mean, obviously you're probably a damn sight quicker than I was. I was going through and they're quite tight with the cuts at Tokyo when I was doing it. They're front loaded, but no, you'll love it. It's a fascinating city. I don't know if it's still there, but go to the Robot Cabaret if it is.
I saw, I think it's now been rebranded as Samurai Cafe.
Oh, was it?
Yes, I believe.
It was one of the most surreal experiences I've ever had. I think Robot Cabaret was just bonkers.
Written down. I was going to ask you for your top Tokyo tip.
Now, that could be an episode all on its own.
Yeah, no.
That'll be in the Patreon content that subscribers can access. Karen, you mentioned about your husband and events. Let's give a shout out to that company. Who is the company and what do they do?
So it's Timing Monkey. So I think his tagline is any race, any distance, any location, any duration, which has pretty much bitten him on the arse, I think, is the best way to phrase it, because we now time an awful lot of the backyard ultras in the UK, which, as you guys know, is a race where you know where it starts, but who knows when it's going to finish. I'm really proud of him. He's incredibly good at what he does. He's timed some of the more complex events, both in the UK, and it's a German company that we use for our race hardware software. And given the complexity of a couple of the events that he has timed, in particular the continuous Deca triathlon a few years ago, they ended up getting the chief executive out of bed of said hardware software company because there was an issue and might have broken it, that they managed to get fixed. But you know, he is very good at what he does. I think he's got a lot of respect from other timers in the race world. He's working with some other big names now as well, as operating as Timing Monkey. So yeah, we do quite a lot across the UK. There's not huge amounts down this way that we don't time, but that's not to say that there aren't other incredible timing organisations out there. It's just that he's my husband, so obviously I'm going to blow smoke out of his arse, and I really, to be fair.
Oh, I would like to do that too, because I think from the user end, from the dot watcher end, it's a very simple but very effective app. You know, when some of the backyard stuff that's been on the go, some of the apps that races use, you need a degree sometimes to navigate your way through it, whereas the Timing Monkey stuff's, you touch it and you see what you want to see.
Yeah, you go straight in and it updates straight away. So the World Championships was particularly complex because I think the nature of the beastie with the World Championships, with the backyards, is that all of the races are going at the same time across the globe. And there's masses and masses and masses of data that are all flowing into one guy in the States who's basically collating it all and sorting it all so that he can do team placings and keep track of who's in, who's out, how many yards a team's done as a collective, all of that sort of stuff. And we ended up managing to get it to work so that we had a spreadsheet behind the scenes that was talking to the global spreadsheet to feed in like every 5 minutes. So when we had people that were finishing, Bad Mike in the States had that data on a live basis from us just within 5 minutes of it going through. any delays on the other end was more because they had that volume of data to deal with the 80 territories, I think it was, that actually had races that started. I think it was due to be 83, but it was 80 in total that had starting figures. So I mean, you can imagine it's a ridiculous amount of stuff to cope with.
Did you say the name Bad Mike?
Bad Mike, yeah.
Brilliant.
So there's two Mikes in the States. There's Mike Melton, who Matt and I count as a friend. Actually, we've not met, but we're friends on Facebook. We chat a lot, particularly over backyards. Mike Melton is the timing guy for all of Laz's races, and then Bad Mike does the IT in particular for Big's Backyard and the World Champs and all that sort of stuff. But he is Bad Mike. Is
he only called Bad Mike to differentiate between the two Mikes?
I think he's just a very bad man, to be honest. I don't know. I wasn't actually brave enough to ask.
I love that. The intrigue.
Yeah. I wasn't brave enough or sleep deprived enough, actually, to be fair.
But that's a brilliant insight into something that I wasn't aware of. But we watched that global spreadsheet updating. The Belgians, I thought the Belgians seemed to just be stuck at the top.
Oh, it was incredible. And we're also friends with Tim, who's the race director for the Belgian backyard, and he manages the timing as well, because he's got his own tracking business and timing business. To the extent that when the world record was first broken and they went over 100, I'd sent him a Facebook message. I went, "Have you got your little post-it ready to put the 1 up on the clock just to add the extra hour to it?" And he went, "Don't worry, Karen, we're way ahead on that one." And they had a little bit of cardboard that they put a 1 on, that they were getting ready to stick to the clock.
Brilliant. We're way off track already, Stevie boy.
I know, already. Jesus.
We are.
We're going to get told off.
We have a agenda, kinda, Karen, a very rough agenda. We veered that far off it that I've kind of lost the plot with it, to be honest. But that's
let's bring it
that's
back
also
to UK.
okay. Bring it back to the UK.
Yeah.
Karen, you're based quite far away from us up here in
I would say it's
Scotland.
A significant distance from you guys, actually.
Yeah. Actually, we'll work that out as to what the actual driving distance would be. You're in Portland, in Dorset.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the logistics involved around about the amount of miles you cover to get to these far-flung destinations around the UK must be in itself quite a challenge.
It involves a fair amount of annual leave from my day job, because I do have a more than full-time day job as well. Yeah.
Okay.
But then I've always worked race events around my day job anyway. It's never been something that I've done as a day-to-day.
Yeah, as well.
And Matt will do an awful lot of the further away timing jobs, just because it's his business and therefore he should do, quite frankly.
Okay.
But Matt's originally from Oldham, so his dad's based up in Oldham. So, for example, he's up there tonight because he's got a job actually with Race Result, the hardware soft company that we work with, because they're doing an install for British Cycling at the velodrome up there. There's some timing kit, but we're really fortunate that my fabulous father-in-law will put us up if we're going to be up in that direction. But for things like, for example, the Viking Way this weekend that is coming up, starts on Saturday, it's driving from Portland through to Hull, because the race is from the Humber Bridge down to Oakham. Although because it's Christmas, I'm going to stop in. My parents are based in Surrey, so I'm actually going to head to them on Thursday, drop off Christmas presents for my nieces and nephews and everybody else, break the journey a bit, and then do the rest of it on Friday. But it does involve annual leave. I think the biggest trek was probably for the Cockbain 3 peaks 2 years ago. It's 3 peaks on foot.
Mhm.
So that was all 3 main peaks, plus I think it worked out about 430, 450 mile in between on foot. That was a 2-day drive. Even I'm not doing that in 1 day. But yeah, I mean, 6-7 hours in the car is not unusual for us.
And on the Viking Way, which if we're putting this out on Friday the 6th, that is
Yeah,
tomorrow morning-ish,
yes,
once you've
yes.
read the race brief, the very short race brief, I'd imagine. What the Viking Way is from Hull to
To Oakham. So it's 147 miles. On the Viking Way part from Humber through Lincoln down into Oakham. It finishes at Oakham Library. Bloody horrible race, to be honest.
in what respect?
Oh, it's great. But then there's loads of mud. And the weather's usually shit, and it's really cold, and it's horrible, and he puts it on in winter in purpose. And yeah, it's all of the checkpoints are outside. We're car booting it or out the back of a van. There's no indoor checkpoints. This is your proper back to basics Cockbain event, other than the fact he gives you more than a bit of water. So there are checkpoints with some supplies, but we're not guaranteeing hot drinks. We're not guaranteeing an awful lot of things.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so let's get a flavour of what your role will be on Saturday. So you will be at the start, registration. Is there
So
such a
registration
thing?
is usually the night before,
Okay.
because most people will stay in the Premier Inn, just the other side of the river, the other end of the bridge.
Luxury to basics. Premier Inn
Totally is.
to total nothing.
Totally is.
The
So we'll do
disparity.
Yeah. So we do registration the night before in the pub. Usually it's usually a really fabulous atmosphere, actually. Everybody gets together, there'll be food on the go, people will have a few drinks. Some people will choose to go to bed early, some people will stay up that bit later. Some of us won't even have checked what time the race is starting on the Saturday morning and not have a clue what time we need to be at the other end of the bridge for the start. And then we turn up, everybody gets there. Mark turns around and says, right, this is your race brief. These are your instructions. Follow the signage. You've all got your trackers on. Keep your high vis on. Got your kit with you that you need. Yeah, off you go. See you later. Ta-ra. And that's it. That's as much pomp and circumstance as you get. There might be an air horn. There might not be. It depends how he's feeling and whether it's working or not. So, but usually it's just see you later. Bye. Ta-ra now. Oh, we'll probably get a group photo before they start underneath the Viking Way sign.
How
What I
many?
love
Oh,
is
sorry.
what I love about the Karen saying there's no hot water, but I love it says on the race brief, hot water not guaranteed. They dangle the carrot that there might be, but you're not seeing no hot water. That's not happening.
It depends if we've used all of the gas for keeping us in tea and coffee. Do you know what I mean? If we've used it all for, I have a fairly high caffeine intake requirement. So if we've used it all, we're not going to buy any more.
And incidentally, how many sign-ups? Any idea on that yet?
It's a max of 40 on that event anyway, yeah.
So then you then moved to the first mobile checkpoint area with.
So I tend to move around the course a bit. I'll bump forwards and bump forwards. It's always minimal type crew with Cockbain stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We're really fortunate with this one is that we've got an extra couple of pairs of hands. But there are a couple of checkpoints that I'm usually, you can predict that I'm going to be at those, if that makes sense. One of the critical ones being the Wetherspoons pub at the finish, because I'll always be found there when we're waiting for people to come in. But yeah, I tend to bump back around the course a little bit as needed, as does Peter, who acts as our grim sweeper. So he'll pick up dropped runners as required. And then I think we've got Jodie helping us out this year as well, who is Roddy Statton's other half. I think she's helping us out. Jason, Fabian said that he's going to cover something else because his wife Sarah is running. So there's a few different people that have said that they'll be available to give us a hand. And Byron is part of the core crew as well, along with myself and Peter and Mark. So between the four of us plus extras, we'll be able to manage the distance. The challenge with the races of those kind of distances when you're on a fairly small core crew is how you manage it if you end up with a big spread. So someone who's gone out big guns and is absolutely speeding down the route, when you know that you're always going to have people who are going to be chasing cut-offs. That's the whole, I don't know, it's not the ethos of the event, but it's part of the point of the event. They're hard, they're achievable ultimately, but they are hard to achieve. So we know we're always going to be there until the last knock-ins for people. So it's managing that balance.
Have you checked the weather forecast?
Sorry?
Have you checked the weather forecast?
I haven't even looked at it. I try not to be honest, because it usually scares the pants off me. It was looking a tad damp the last time I had a look.
Yes.
What?
But I've got a car, Steve. Do you know what I mean? I'll be fine.
You're all right.
I've got a car and heater and a dry robe. I'll not a problem at all.
Kit essentials.
You're involved in a lot of races, and what you described has been for quite a while as well, Karen. Any memorable moments, good, bad, or give us the bad stuff actually, good or bad, that jump out at you over the years?
The bad stuff. Honestly, I'd rather give you the good stuff, to be fair. But do you know what? Because this is one of the questions that you sent me ahead of time. It's one that I've really struggled with because it's been such a long duration of time. I do quite a lot of one-on-one crewing for people as well, assisting them to do something that perhaps they thought that they might not, and therefore having a crew can make life easier. There are some particular standouts. To touch on a couple of them briefly, obviously Vic and Gordon at long last, they scared the bleeding pants off me, and then they finished with like 30 seconds to spare, the pair of buggers. I didn't think they were going to do it. I'd written them off, and they know that, and I've said this to their faces as well on many occasions. They really, really had to pull something out of the bag for that last 25 miles of long last. They were incredible. Such an emotional finish. It was amazing. Mandy at the Tunnel Ultra, after she'd managed to get herself turned around on one lap because she was really so sleep deprived, which meant that she hadn't crossed the mat at the other end, which meant that she then had to effectively do an extra mile and a half because she'd not done far enough. And we were, I literally caught her as she finished, and she had 3-4 minutes to spare, and we didn't think that she was going to do it. She really had to pull something out for that one. I solo crewed Rob Cowlin to a personal best at Thames Path 100 with Centurion. Never done under 30 hours before. I think we brought him in at 26:40, something like that. But he had incredible paces, and he was just a brilliant athlete to be working with because he did everything that we told him to. So he did what his pacers asked of him, and he did what I told him to. So we kept things as slick as we possibly could. There was no faffing, there was no rummaging around for things. It was like, no, a mile out, text me, tell me what you need. I'll put it in a sandwich bag. I'll swap your bottles over. See you later. Ta-ra. No time for a chat. Thanks very much. But probably, I think the most important event finish, and I'm not going to call it a race finish because it wasn't, although it does tie into a subsequent race finish. There was an incredible man called Mark Thornbury, who I had the sheer honour and privilege to call a friend. He was diagnosed with liver cancer shortly before he was due to take part in the Grand Union Canal race back in, I think it was 2017, I want to say. I haven't checked my dates. This is how far I've kind of been not thinking about it so much. But it was around there. He was diagnosed with liver cancer, which meant that he couldn't toe the start line of the GCR. So he decided, bollocks to it all, I'm going to do it anyway. But over 3 days in the September of that year. So we did it. He kind of put it out on socials. And there was a really small group of us that kind of picked up on it. And I was like, well, I'm free. So how about I come and crew the couple of guys of you that are thinking about doing it? And he was like, yeah, that's brilliant. And then it turned into a beastie of its own, honest to God. It was, honestly, it was the Grand Union Canal Fun Run for Cancer. It was just amazing. So we started at Gastric Basin, and we'd already planned in where the overnight stops were going to be and how much mileage we needed to do, where we needed to get to, because obviously we pre-booked hotels and stuff because we knew that he couldn't do it. It's only like 6-7 months post-diagnosis, which wasn't a particularly good diagnosis either. And we planned it all out. There were some days we had 60 odd people out on the canal with him. It was the most incredible experience. I like the core guys that were out with us, and I'm not going to name them all because I know that I'm going to forget someone. It's going to be like naming the seven dwarves, you know, and there's one person that you just can't think of. But critically, Alan was race dad, Alan Rumbles was race dad, I was race mum, and then he had a number of other people that ran every day. There was people achieving incredible distances that they'd never hit before. And all they were doing was popping down to run a few miles along the canal with Mark. I think that the fundraising for King's College Hospital, which is specific to liver cancer research in Mark's name, is in the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds now. Sadly, we lost him a couple of 3 years ago. But the Canary Trail events guys still fundraise for him and on his behalf because he was a core part of their original team and stuff like that. They run some bonkers races as well, the Cockbain 200. In fact, Alan Risk, who you guys have had on, was the only finisher of the Cockbain 200. I think it was not the weekend just gone, the weekend before. That's Alan and Pete and the guys that were all involved with the GUC Fun Run as well. But what made the Fun Run particularly special was that Dick Kern, who's obviously the founder of the GUCR, and Keith Godden, the current race director, they brought the full kit and caboodle down. So when he was finishing, he came in, the banner was up, he got given a medal. Dick and Keith were both there to give him a handshake. There was loads of people there to see him in. And you know what? 6 months later, the bugger did the actual race and he completed it as well.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
That's one of my most special memories.
It also maybe completes the other one, the particularly inspiring story. Who'd asked you that question? I mean, that equally could answer that question. Thank you so much for sharing that. I never knew that detail of that. And I love, you've just described the running community and how it works. And
it's the running community at its best. I mean, you asked me the question about particularly inspiring finishes, but I would throw that back to you and say I find every runner that finishes a race event inspiring because you don't know what their story is, you don't know what they faced, and it's a conversation that I have with people all the time. It's not the time that you run, it's the time that you have. It's not about, I mean, for some people it is very much about getting to the finish line as quickly as they possibly can. But for others, it's about getting to that finish line in the first place. And that's what it's all about. It's about helping people to achieve what they can, that they perhaps had in the back of their heads that they thought they might not be able to.
I love that. It's not the time you run, it's the time you have.
Yeah. Well, I stole that from another runner back in the day who used to run at Enigma, who actually lives up in Scotland now. So for all I know, he listens.
Well, it's a thing. Once you get Scottish residency, you've got to listen to Young Hearts Run Free.
Right, okay.
Yeah. They pump it out on a Friday night about 7 o'clock on all the radio stations.
Yeah.
It's blanket coverage.
Somebody's bound to have that tattoo. They must. It's not the time you run, it's the time you have.
Bound to have copyrighted that T-shirt that I just have done. So, haven't they?
Maybe an opportunity.
John loves an opportunity.
Can we bring you from the other side of the tape to the other side of the bar? Can we do that and talk about the Grand Tour of Skiddaw? They're right carrot danglers, these folk that work at the Cockbain events. Karen said to me, I must tell you about the Grand Tour of Skiddaw. And I don't know if you want to call it a lock-in. I'm going to use that word. Maybe you want to use something different. But the after party, Karen.
I love the GTS. Grand Tour of Skiddaw is an incredible race. It's been in the race calendar for a long, long time, but the baton was handed over to a new race director in 2023, who has been involved with the event in one way or another from the other side of the fence, whether she's been running it or supporting for many years before, so she's totally familiar with it. The existing RD was looking to step back, as some RDs are at the moment. They have been doing things for a long time. It's time they took their own lives back. But she didn't want to see it disappear off the race calendar. And again, it's someone who I am proud to call a friend. I respect her immensely. She has her own reputation in the race world anyway, because it's Nikki Griffin who's also involved with Centurion. So massive kudos to her for taking it on. So Matt and I, this is not an event that we work. It's not an event that we time. We just turn up to help out because we want to. That and the fact the lakes is beautiful, and we'll take any blooming excuse to go up there, to be honest, even if it is a bit of a schlep for us. But we usually break the journey with the father-in-law, you see. So we've got ways and means of getting up there. Nikki took it on in 2023. Historically, there has always been post-event food, a fire pit, and the Staggerin at the end of the race. The Staggerin being the bar. And Matt, my husband, took one look at Nikki 2 years ago, looked at her sideways and went, "Are you sure this is a wise idea?" When she turned around to me and said, "I'd like you to be the landlady of the Staggerin, please." Actually, it turned out to be one of the more sensible decisions that she'd made, because I was the most sober person on site and hadn't drunk all of the profits by the end of the night 2 years ago. So I think that remains my job. But I mean, the event's changed a bit. It's beautiful. It's absolutely stunning. The scenery is incredible, as you would expect in the lakes. But it is changing next year. There's been a change of ownership of the original race HQ. That and the fact there's been some river erosion in the first kind of little stretch of the event that there was. So it's going next year from being a just shy of a 50 miler. It's going to be two different events. There'll be a 20 mile and a 50k.
Okay.
So slightly shorter distances, but they may be looking at bringing back the 50 mile in 2026, which will be probably 2 loops of one of the loops. The 20 mile doesn't go up Skiddaw itself, whereas the 50k does. You still get that. It's just that it was all based out of Cockbain instead of from the school a few miles out that it used to be. But the checkpoints are absolutely bang on point, as you would expect. What's really exciting, actually, is the level of female participation that we've got as well. It's really fabulous. As someone who's been involved in race events, particularly ultra events, for such a long period of time, when I look at things like the Cockbain events, and yes, they are next level to an extent because of what you have to have done to get in and the time that you need, all that sort of thing, the cut-offs. I've always been incredibly outnumbered at those. But there's been a massive, massive increase in female participation, and I think it's incredible. But we've got such massive support from the ultra community as a whole. There's camping, there's food vans, hopefully, there's, you know, there's all of that kind of party atmosphere that really does go with it. And it's just one of the highlights of our year now. It's a weekend that Matt and I will book out just for GTS. We won't, if there are timing jobs, it won't be us that are covering them. We'll get other people to cover them for us because we will be at GTS. So I'm the landlady of the bar for my sins, which is always great fun watching everybody else get drunk when I'm stood there going, oh, well, this is great, isn't it? Matt supports with the logistics, hopping around the course with the van, helping with the checkpoints and all of that sort of thing. But the biggest, perhaps the most special thing about it is the relationship that they've got with Mountain Rescue. So it's not a not-for-profit event, but it might just as well be, because anything that is made financially either goes back into the event or it goes into Mountain Rescue. So all of the proceeds from the bar go to Mountain Rescue. There is an option with the entries where people can cover off the entry fee for Mountain Rescue teams. So this is absolutely a shout out to any of the Scottish MRTs. If you want to come down and take part as an MRT pair, have a look at the website and take a look, because it would be incredible to have you join us, because it's all about MRT. It's all about supporting that side of things. They're very much about giving back. In fact, when the trig point on High Pike in the lakes was vandalised, it was the guys at GTS that paid for it to be replaced, because it's all about giving back to that local community and not having too dramatic an impact on the area that they're running in either. So the numbers are kept quite tight. It's not flooded with entrants to, you know, it's all done with a view to mitigate the impact that we have as a race event, whilst also giving people the best experience that they can, contributing to the local community and giving back to the mountain rescue teams who do such an incredible job across the whole of the Four Nations.
Well, that's a shout out for our MRT listeners, which we know we do have a few, don't we, John?
We certainly do, yeah. We certainly do, yeah. So
no, definitely check it out, because there is an option for other people to pay for MRT entries. Yeah. So there may be that there's banked entries that can be used for teams. It would be, Nick is really looking to build, or Nick and Sharon are really looking to build the MRT entry side of it. We're getting more and more teams every year, and it's really lovely to see. And it's lovely to see the regional variations as well, because we've got teams from Wales coming over and all sorts. So it'd be great to get some down from Scotland. That would be amazing.
We can put a link in the show notes to the website. We'll also do that for the Mark Cockbain stuff as well.
Definitely will.
Get more.
You don't want to encourage people into bad habits with the Cockbain stuff, John. Definitely do GTS. But
for the number of our listeners take part in Mark Cockbain events, I think, was it Alan Cormack that lit the flame, Stephen?
One of my favourites. I love Al.
Way back. Alan came on and spoke to us about the tunnel. We're like, the tunnel? Yes. And then that then brought all the Mark Cockbain stuff onto our radar. But you mentioned Alan Risk. Alan
Yeah.
and his wife Ali were down doing the tunnel.
They
quite
were doing the
recently.
tunnel this year, yeah.
And
Before we
Mike
started-
Raffin was doing the bridge.
Yeah, Mike Raffin.
Yeah,
Before
and
we-
he's
yeah.
done the tunnel before as well. He's done on Lass.
Yeah,
He's
before we
done a
started
few.
recording, we mentioned the blonde bombshell that is Martin Heggie. So there's been it's been a
My
number.
favourite wee angry Scotsman. When he was doing the Lon Lass, he just kept phoning me going, Karen, I don't know where I'm going. I'm like, look at your bloody maps, you dickhead.
He'd respond well to that too. And
Oh yeah.
he'd be
Well,
He gets
totally
very
fine with that.
grumpy now when he turns up to a race and it's Matt and not me. He's like, well, where's Karen?
Yeah, he's a well, I'm going to say fans' favourite, a listener's favourite, definitely Martin,
He can't possibly not be.
as well as one of ours. Yeah, love him dearly, love him dearly.
Well, I want to just actually ask a side question. There was a recent Cockbain event. I think it was called Track 83.5 or something. I can't remember.
Track 83.5. Yeah, we didn't have
Yeah.
many finishes of that, Stephen, to be
Ah,
honest.
bugger. Because that was one that I was watching this guy that I know on his tracker.
It was a bit shit, wasn't he, really, to be honest?
Well, it started off pretty promising, and then
Then it
just
dropped off a cliff entirely. And he should have
Just-
stopped at 50 mile, really, to be honest with you.
but I
Gone
know
back to
this.
that nice warm bed that was down the road.
I know this. I know this fella too well, and he never stops. But that is one of his taglines, Karen, regardless of what he's told. So, but that track 100 was an event that's just 25 hours running round a track. Logistically, that must be one of the easier ones to pull off in terms of the need for a mobile crew going along. You know, it's sitting in the one place. Have plenty charging your phone.
He's got to be honest, it's boring as buggery.
I can imagine you've got your record and Wordle and every other game on your phone imaginable. Either that, or you don't have to drive and you can maybe get into
Just
some
sit there
stronger
and
stuff.
no, and which I don't do because I've always got to drive the following morning, so I'm always conscious of that. But any of the race directors that we work with, where we do an awful lot of track events. But most of them are time challenges. So that's the big difference with Mark's, is that it's 100 miles. It's 100 miles or bust.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't do the 100, you're a DNF. Whereas others, it's just like, it's as far as you can
in a
in
certain
the 6
time.
hours, 6 or 12 or 24 hours. I mean, we do 24 and 48 hour track events as well. It's, it's pretty straightforward. Like you say, it is dead easy from a crewing perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It's when we usually manage to get an hour or so's downtime, particularly when you've got the runners as well trained as I do at Cockbain stuff. And don't even ask me until you've been going for at least 12 hours, unless you're on for a record. I'm not telling you how many laps you've done. I'll delete all your data.
And is that one of your many motivational techniques?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I tell them,
That's reverse psychology,
don't
isn't
talk to me. Yeah, don't talk to me. Don't ask me. If you ask me, I'm going to delete it all. It's fine. Don't worry. It's no skin off my nose.
Don't look at me like that.
Yeah.
I heard these words for myself this year, and it was
I did it in the race brief, didn't I, Jonathan?
yeah. And the term that you used was a substantial number of hours, and then for the first 7 or 8 hours, I'm going, is this substantial? But it wasn't.
It's really not when you're in a
wasn't.
25-hour race.
Yeah, but what
Over
happened?
halfway.
What I seen were that doesn't think that counts. But what I seen was when runners had, I don't know where you start this, Karen, if it's 10 or 15 laps to go, Karen would come
About
out
10.
from the side, and the people that were in the front, they were going fast, but Karen would just say 10 laps to go, and that's it, and then it's gone.
Yeah.
That's it. But what was brilliant though was even at that time, because by that time you're tired, this is like 14 and a half, 15 hours in, these guys were moving really quick. Karen's on it and she comes out and she just does it, and is brilliant. And then the camaraderie builds up and everybody's cheering, people around. It's absolutely phenomenal. So
But this year was particularly nuts as well because we had a race at the front, and it
Yeah.
was a proper race at the front. We've never had that at the Track 100 before. There's always been speedy bods because it's the ideal race for a Sparta auto qualifier, which is what people were going for this year. And I think it is, I mean, Mark will probably message to correct me after this, but I'm pretty sure it's the highest number of Sparta autos that we've had set
really?
at Track 100 up to date. We always had ballot qualifiers, and we've had a couple of autos, but this year we had a really good number of auto qualifiers, and it was really fabulous to see, actually. Dead chuff for all of them, really pleased. But then we had one of the most inspirational finishes as well when Danny came in, John, and
Danny
he brought it
Winchester.
in to finish, yeah.
Yeah, brilliant.
Because he'd been so far behind from a timing perspective, and I'd been giving him a G up, and his guys had come back and given him a G up as well. And he picked up his pace so significantly that for him to actually bring it in the time was fabulous.
Yeah, because he had less than 20 minutes to spare, I think. Something like that. Because I think I said to Stephen, I thought, I'm going to keep going because I set myself a new thing I wanted to do. And I thought, I've got to get to that before Danny. But everybody that was left there, and there was some people still hanging around, everybody that was left there was cheering Danny around. And it was really quite emotional when Danny done it. And I've seen the post-race stuff that Danny's put on socials, and it's quite fantastic.
It gets you right here, actually, because it's special for me because it's for mental health charities and stuff like that. You know, we've lost a couple of friends who have decided that they didn't have any other way out and all of that sort of stuff. And so for me, seeing him finish that in the middle of the night, heading into first light with the cut off at 10 o'clock in the morning, I didn't think he was going to do it.
No, he looked done.
And I'm usually pretty on it when it comes to calculating what people are going to achieve, but I've been wrong before. I love being proven wrong. This is the point I absolutely adore being proven wrong. And Danny did it in style. He really did, because I thought if he was going to do it, he was going to do it with a minute or 2 minutes, but he came in a decent time under as well.
Yeah, brilliant.
And actually, to be fair, 24 and change or sub 25 for 100 miles is nothing to be sniffed at anyway. It's just because it's a Cockbain event, it doesn't detract from the fact that 25 out sub 25 for 100 miles is a significant achievement.
I'm right, it is.
Yeah. Well done, Danny.
Did you have an interaction with John at all during it? A pleasant interaction?
I think I told him to fuck off at one point, actually.
more
I'm
than
pretty
one.
sure I did.
Yeah, you did. You did. Yeah.
What was he asking for food? He's usually
No, I think he was asking me to go on the podcast, to be honest.
Okay.
But I persevered.
On that one.
I persevered as I do. It doesn't just stop. Doesn't just stop on the track. Then you find
He
Karen
kept
on
tapping the
Facebook.
door. He was tapping me up on Facebook Messenger. He's like, seriously, Karen, we could really do with having you on. I'm like, why? All I do is shout at people.
Tell them to fuck off.
Yeah.
But it's been a brilliant chat. This has been really interesting. We've never had this type of guest before who's got that knowledge that you have from the other side of the tape that's able to speak about. Well,
I'm going to get messages from race directors across the country now going, you're giving away all of our secrets, Karen. Seriously, shut up. Stop talking.
And another thing, you mentioned in 2009. I'm not sure how old Facebook or that would have been in 2009. I think it started late 90s, mid 90s, something like that.
No, it was two. Yeah. I've been a member of Facebook since 2007 and I was fairly early.
Right. Okay. So it's in the noughties.
I thought it was 04.
2004, I think. Yeah.
I think you're probably right.
I think it was. But social media has changed a wee bit in the last 20 years, hasn't it? How much do you use social media around the race events that you've got? You mentioned about the fetches. You mentioned about Runners World, all that sort of stuff. have you seen all that change in the last 20 years?
So I have to hold my hands up. I haven't been, Runners World Forums died a death pretty much back in 2012, 2013, to be honest. You saw them kind of dropping off a cliff. Fetch Everyone is still going strong. I'm not on there. I'm not running, so I'm not on there anywhere near as much, but I know of an awful lot of fetchies that are still on there. It's still very active. It's still really useful. It's really useful from a looking for races perspective, actually. Social media wise, you could probably classify me as a bit of a dinosaur because I am Facebook and that's it. I don't do Insta. I don't do TikTok. I don't do any of those sorts of things. And I think it's both a benefit and a drawback, I think, because it just means that news is incredibly quick to get out there, and fake news is also incredibly quick to get out there. So you get both the positives and the negatives. So, one of the ones that got stuck in my head the other day, there's an event company that we work with that are particularly good with their socials, but it just meant that I had M&M's stuck in my head for about a week afterwards as an earworm, just looped in because they're that good at targeting their audience. But then I suppose it's something that as race companies people have to learn. I don't necessarily need to do that side of it because I'm more on the volunteering or the timing and the support side of it. I'm not actually organising the events. I held my own events back in 2014 and 2015. When I worked for the Port of Dover, I hosted my own race events. So I actually fully was race director, responsible for everything. It was dead easy because it was on the land that the organisation that I worked for owned. And they were quite happy for me to do it so long as it didn't have any cost to them. So I was like, right, okay, I'll crack on. And we raised a huge amount of money for charity whilst we were doing it because I had such amazing support from the race community at the time. But again, that was still, it was 2014, 2015. Yes, you're out there on socials, but it doesn't necessarily have the benefits or damaging impact as it can do now. I think socials is really important. I think all event directors, whether that be short distance, marathon, ultra, triathlon, everybody is really struggling with the recovery post-COVID because people just aren't entering in the same timescales as they used to. And what people need to understand is that actually the race costs are committed quite a significant period of time before the actual event date. But if you don't have the entries, by the time you have to commit those costs, potentially you can't put the event on because you don't know that you're going to get the rest of the entries. It's hard. It's really hard. People's culture has changed, and the way that people do enter races has definitely changed.
Yep.
And it's challenging, and we see that across the piece. It's not something that's individual to individual race companies. It is across the board.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think that change in habit almost, it's like there's a tendency to commit for things later. Like, yeah. So as long as I know there's always going to be entries, I can hum and haw about it until 4 weeks before it, or whereas the tendency to go like a year out almost and put all your eggs in the basket is less. So you still get people who want that and need to plan out their year like that, but there's this more sort of ad hoc, opportunistic race entry habit that's formed for me. I've noticed that post-COVID, Karen. just that
It
change.
definitely is, and it's people that are like, well, race entries have always been available and up until X period of weeks before. So rather than entering 3 months before, I'll enter 2 weeks before or
Yeah,
just before the entries close.
yeah, it's
But
the
actually, the
last.
race might not be able to go ahead if everybody enters 2 weeks before. You know, you haven't been able to pay for your licenses, your insurances, your permits, your medals, your everything else that goes with, and get everything in place. So it does put people in a really tricky position. And that's why you'll see that there's some races that are sadly and really sadly
Mhm.
disappearing off the calendar. And a lot of that is because of that crunch, and it's because of that not having those relevant timescales and the entries that come in time.
You need that critical mass, you know, to make the whole thing viable. Otherwise, race directors are in danger of running at a loss, which is absolutely one of the reasons that the races then fall off the event calendars, which is a shame.
Might
It is.
also be a part as well that there's a whole load more races available too. You know, I'm not like there's more
Choice.
become that. Yeah. There's that's it. There's more choice, but
Oh God, I mean, like I said earlier, essentially 2012, let's take 2012 as a start point when I was picking up with Foxy and Enigma and Milton Keynes. Up until that point, he was one of the only race directors in the country that was doing multi-day events.
Mhm.
So, you know, your 2 days or your 3 days or your 4 days, and then we brought in a 7. But now you can sneeze and you're on a marathon every weekend. Do you know what I mean? They
Mhm.
might be really small ones, and kudos to the small event organisers. I love them as much as I do the big ones. And I work events from zero maintenance all the way through to as high maintenance as you can possibly get, like the arc of attrition. You know, you can look at 2 different polar opposites than Cockbain events through to the arc. But it's amazing that there is that variation and that variety of events that are out there, but they all still need the entries, because ultimately they still need to have the entries to be able to go ahead. And I love that people have got the variety, and I love that they've got the choice. But they need to choose a bit quicker, would probably be the way that I would phrase it, because otherwise you are going to lose events. And the problem is, once an event's been gone a year, it's really hard to get it back into the calendar again.
to revive it and bring it back. Yeah. Because it's that rap. People move on so quick, don't they?
Well, it's one of the reasons why Nikki and Sharon picked up with GTS, I think. And this is me speaking as me. It's not me putting words into their mouths. It's just that it had been an iconic race on the calendar for such a long period of time that they didn't want to see it go, and they'd been the other side with running it and taking part and all that sort of stuff. They had the skills and experience, so they could pick it up and run with it. And they're doing an incredible job. There's other race organisations that are doing the same. I mean, John, I'm going to shoehorn it in now because I did promise the boys that I would. I'm going to talk about the Brutal.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Because obviously we cover triathlon events as well.
Yeah.
But one of our heartlands, in fact, when Matt actually first started out in supporting events before he did timing, was the Brutal Tri, which is based up in Llanberis in Snowdon. And it's a lake swim in Llynffordan, followed by a bike, which includes Penny Pass, which is horrible. And then a run route, which includes...
Was that
It
horrible?
was horrible. Horrible. But beautiful. It's beautiful, but it is brutal. It's called the Brutal Tri for an absolute reason. And then the run route includes a climb Snowdon plus some lake laps around Llynffordan. It's an incredible event. My amazing friend Claire set it up in 2012. Well, I can call her a friend now. We didn't know each other back in the day. But she's also run a few Cockbain events, so she's that bonkers. She's the only British female to have done a double-decker triathlon, which is quite some.
What's a double-decker triathlon?
Double-decker triathlon. It's exactly what it says on the tin.
Back
It's
to
20.
back.
It's 20 times Ironman distance tries, continuous. So 48-hour swim, 2,240-mile bike. This is where I get a message from her after this saying you got it all wrong, Karen. And what's it for? 524-mile run on the end of it. I'll just let that sink. I'll just let that sink in for a sec.
Oh, does that take about a year?
I think it was about a month actually, and it was out in Mexico as well, so it was really dead easy with the heat. It was amazing. She loved it. She really enjoyed it.
All inclusive in Cancun or something, doing that. Right, lap of luxury.
She's honestly, she's
actual hot
incredible.
water.
She's got such mental resilience. Still hasn't finished the tunnel, mind. I'll just drop that one in there because she wouldn't expect anything. She wouldn't expect anything less from me.
What's her name? Claire
Smith.
Claire Smith.
She's known as Brutal Claire on Facebook.
Okay.
She is Brutal Claire. But she set up the Brutal Triathlon. The first one was 2012. But she decided that this year was going to be her last. So 12 calendar years, but obviously there's a COVID hiatus in there. But two of the boys who have also been involved in the background over the last very long time. So actually Gav was actually involved with the very first one back in 2012. They have taken it and they have resurrected it. So the Brutal is back next year.
Oh yeah.
None of the other events, but just the Brutal. It's an incredible event. It's the crew are like nothing I've ever come across before. They're fabulous. Even the water safety team are all over it. They're not going to pull people out of the water if they don't have to. They'll go alongside shouting at them to get them out the swim they need to. It's just they are fabulous events. And it would have been said it's a classic example of people not wanting to see something disappear off the race calendar. Now, admittedly, it's slightly different rationale with Claire. She had other commitments that she needed to be focusing on. But the fact that people need to recognise that races mean that much to people that they want to take them on, but not to ignore the fact that when they are taken on by other people, it doesn't mean that the same commitment isn't there that there was from the previous race director. I'm not even sure if I'm making sense now. Do you see what I mean? Not to lose that loyalty to the event just because the RD has changed.
But we not keep the working template as such and try and have the same ethos and values as such to go along with it and evolve it. It's
all about that. It's maintaining the ethos and maintaining the continuity and the going forwards and this is what has been brilliant and this is what we can continue and the atmosphere in race camp and all of that sort of stuff. It's all about that because that's what the community is all about, really.
20th of September 2025.
You're throwing that in there, are you, John? You've been Googling.
I'm looking at it. It's called the Brutal Extreme Triathlon and Seriously Brutal Duathlon.
Yes, there are the duathlons as well.
Yeah. What's not to like?
Seriously. I think I've got my wife her secret Christmas present.
There you go, Santa Claus. Bring it on in. Oh, love
it. She's going to continue to love me dearly.
So this is another link that we'll add into the show notes. This is extreme stuff. Wow. We've got the hard stuff, and now we've got the seriously brutal stuff. I love it. I do.
Where do we sign up for the easy stuff?
That's the track 83.5, Steve.
Twist the knife in, Karen.
I love it. Karen had the pleasure of seeing me 336 times. Maybe next year she'll see me 403. We'll see how we go.
You better get it bloody finished next year. Otherwise, I'm deeply disappointed in myself, to be honest.
If this year was a good weather year, Cam, next year is destined to be not a good weather year.
And to be hellish. Bring on the hell. Bring on the hell.
The hellish are the better. In fact, hellish events. I think you maybe got.
There
What
used
a
to be
name.
events called Hell on a Hill, but they're not
Well,
held anymore.
Okay, well, this is just
Yeah.
outright hellish.
Oh,
Fucking
right.
hellish events.
Just in
Company.
case we're
You're
turning
giving me ideas
people,
now.
in case we're turning people off, right? What advice would you give somebody, Karen, who was thinking about taking on one of these multi-day or the hard stuff? Because a lot of people will be unsure, hesitant about it. What advice would you give somebody? You've got a lot of experience of seeing it.
So we're talking specifically hard stuff now, not like entry level type ultra.
No, we're
I
going
think-
crazy. We're going crazy.
Yeah.
We're
Batshit
just
crazy
going
stuff.
straight in. We're going straight in at Cockbain level or
You
brutal try
described
or
it
whatever.
really well when you said something about it that they're achievable. You said something and it almost
They're meant to be hard. They
Yeah.
are ultimately achievable, but you've really got to bloody work at it.
I,
You've really got to work.
I think that's the mindset that our listeners it'll resonate with them, is the fact that you can stand in that start line believing that you can get to the finish line. It's not impossible. However, it's going to be one of the hardest things you've done in your life.
And that's exactly it, to be honest. Ultimately, and let's take Cockbain as an example in his events, he hasn't designed them to not be finishable.
Mhm.
He's never designed them to be unfinishable. But he's designed them to be an absolute bastard. So you're not going to be able to rock up and wing it and
Yeah.
just get away with it. You've got to be pushing. You're going to have me shouting at you. Come into a checkpoint when you've got 2 minutes to go. I'm going to be telling you exactly where you are and what pace you need to be doing to get to the next checkpoint and make it in time. And if you don't do that, well, that's your tough shit. You haven't worked hard enough. But ultimately, if you're stood on that start line, you know that you can do it. I mean, there's some classic footage from, I think it was the tunnel this year where the One Show were down and they did a bit of a 5-minute segment, I think it was. One of the runners that they were covering, Brendan's going to hate me for this because I'm name checking him, but one of the runners that they were covering was Brendan. Now, he's completed the tunnel before. He didn't really need to come back and do it again, but he came back this year and he was pants compared to what he was the year before. And he was coming in and he was having the most incredible hallucinations. It was fabulous. He was telling me all sorts, but he was checking with me every time. And I was like, right, you need to do 15 minutes. I need to see you in 10 minutes. I need to see you in 12 and a half minutes. And I'm literally shouting at him. I think he brought it in with a couple of minutes to go, to the extent that Mark and I were kind of looking at each other going, the One Shower here, this is going to go one way or the other. He's either going to make it or he's not. So they're going to get one story or the other. But of course, everybody there is pulling for him. It's down to him, his head and his own 2 feet and the rest of his body being able to hang on. He knew that he could do it because he'd done it before. So you shouldn't ever go into one of those types. If you've had the cojones to enter in the first place and you had the qualification and have been accepted, clearly there is a thought process there that you can do it. It's believing that you can do it, but then working to make sure that you can do it. It's the making sure that you eat well, that you take on the fluids that you need, listening to the race crew as and when you need to, not doing anything to break the rules is another one, because obviously Mark has quite strict race rules. But I think, yeah, I mean, if you believe you can, then you can, but you've got to work at it.
It's not got the hard stuff for nothing.
It really isn't.
Yeah, brilliant. It's brilliant. And going back to the track, I witnessed people in all sorts of disrepair throughout the night and in the early morning some people made it, some people never. Some people never
Mhm.
got back up and ran again. Some people walked out and away, and you thought they were running really well. But it's a lot of it's mindset. It's
Mhm.
obviously a lot of it's physical, but it's the whole, for want of a better term, it's the whole shebang. You've got to bring the whole shebang along, you know?
I don't know what shebang means.
I know
Aye, well,
exactly what shebang means.
Oh,
Thank you
imagine.
very much.
What about the whole shooting match? The whole shooting match.
It's a bit like kit and caboodle, isn't it? It's the whole kit and
yes,
caboodle.
it's exactly.
Well, you did say you'd know Scottishisms.
Oh, Stevie boy, talking about dialect words,
Uh-huh.
let's do it. Let's open up that dictionary.
I know, I'm looking forward to this, Karen. I can sense an absolute belter
It's
coming in.
actually pretty tame,
Oh, you can hit too.
but it's really but it's really specific. So I
Okay.
thought you might appreciate it because it is really specific. So the words that I have come up with is Kimberlin.
Okay.
Spell it.
So Kimberlin. And it's someone who lives on Portland that isn't a result of at least 2 generations of the family, because you cannot be a Portlander if you're not a result of at least 2 generations. You're a Kimberlin. You're an outsider.
You're an invader.
So it's a bit like when don't want this to be offensive to anyone. That's all I'm concerned about.
You've already offended plenty of people.
It's a bit like when you get coastal towns that refer to tourists as grockles because they get in the way. But a Kimberlin is someone who lives locally but isn't from local.
Mm.
Because obviously I'm originally born in London. I moved to Kent. I've moved to, well, all sorts of Kent. And then I moved down here. And then Matt's obviously from Oldham. So we're as outside as you can get.
So you're double Kimberlin?
Pretty much, yeah, with both of us. Neither of us are Portland originally, you know.
And the other word you said.
Yes.
You going there as well, Stephen? On you go.
Yes.
Oh, grockle?
Yeah, grockle.
Have you not heard that either?
Well, I'll tell you what a grockle means to John and I, is when you kind of go, oh.
So you catch that phlegm at the back of your throat.
Oh, no, so down here they're tourists. South and southwest coast, they're tourists. Grockles.
See, that could get you in bother, Stephen. Calling somebody a grockle up here. I could but that's the beauty of dialect, isn't it?
It is.
I've
never heard. So
changes everywhere,
isn't it? Where does the term Kimberlin come from?
I'm not totally sure, to be honest.
Okay.
I did try Googling it. I was really struggling with words, and then all of a sudden it kind of punched me on the nose at 6 o'clock tonight after I've been messaging John to say I don't want to do it.
That's what happens. Okay. Yeah. John, 2 for the price of 1, a K and a G. Magic. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Cam. Both absolute new ones to John and I. That's what
it might be worth Googling on a not safe for work basis, though. I don't know, because I haven't actually looked properly.
We didn't answer it in nobody. It's cool. Now, this next one I'm really interested in, because at a lot of the Cockbain events, there's no headphones.
No.
Right? No music. But that doesn't stop the race team listening to the music in a porta cabin if they wish to do so. But
what, in a nice warm heated porta cabin where we've got a kettle and I can do work on my laptop and all that sort of stuff while you lot are running around in the pissing rain.
All you see is this dry robe floating back and forward.
Yeah, that's all it is.
That's it.
On a black and yellow bobble hat. Don't forget the black and yellow bobble hat.
But our last question is of the musical variety. What song or track would Karen Weber like to add in for our listeners' pleasure?
Yeah.
So we're a slightly eclectic household here. We can go from drum and bass through to jungle through to hardcore metal. and not a problem whatsoever. In fact, to the extent the other night I had the Venga Boys playing in the kitchen on my little kitchen party for one via, I can't say the word because she's over there and otherwise she's going to start playing. But I have to say, this is, so again, this is a shout out sort of to the husbands. This is one where he's on the turbo upstairs in the man cave. This is where I know he's having a session on the bike on the turbo that's really, really pushing him. And it's When Legends Rise by Godsmack.
Legends Rise by who? God?
Godsmack.
Godsmack. I'm definitely
And actually, the lyrics are bang on. For an ultra, they are bang on. I think it's an incredible track. I love it.
Okay, I haven't heard that, so I look forward.
I like to be a little bit different, John.
Oh, I know that. I know that, Karen.
I have my own brand of support. Do you know what I mean? Are you listening to it now, Steve?
No, I've added it to the Spotify Le Buff Buff Collection Volume 9 Turning Japanese playlist. Yeah, we're also actually gathering listeners' choice songs just now for a Japanese themed playlist of its own. So if you have a moment's reflection and think of an appropriate song from your time in the land of the
10
rising
years
sun,
ago. Yeah, I'll have a think about it.
Have a think and let us know. We'll get that added in. It's a growing list of inspirational and slightly bonkers songs.
I can imagine, actually, for that one.
Yes.
It must have been about an hour and a half before I ran or moved my last lap on the track when I said to Karen, "What about you coming on the podcast?" The first ask was just dismissed, probably with that "fuck off."
That's exactly what I dismissed it with, I think, John.
And then I think I probably softened it and tried it a couple of times. It was still a no-go. And then there was Facebook messaging happened for the few days after.
You carried on trying afterwards. You added me as a friend on Facebook and then you just carried on trying. Oh, by the way, Carol, we'd really love to have you. Oh my God, it's wearing me down.
I can be persistent, really, or annoying, maybe the same thing. But you asked me a question. You said, why do you want to speak to me on your podcast?
Hopefully, I don't do anything really.
Hopefully, though, this last hour and a half has explained exactly why. You're giving us an insight, certainly that I've never had before, to what goes on behind the... And you've got a lot of experience behind the time and scene. I'm desperate to go to the Staggerin. Absolutely desperate to go.
So you should be. Entries are still open. Mountain rescue entries are still open. It's an incredible race and everybody should do it. #, just saying.
I never mentioned anything about me running. I'm just coming for the Staggerin. Yeah. So, but I've been really intrigued by listening to your insight from that side of stuff. Your passion for racing, your passion for running, your passion. The story about Mark Thornbury was quite brilliant. So thank you very much for sharing that. So that's the reason, Karen. And I never even knew that, but that's the reason I wanted you to come on the podcast. And I'm so glad that you did, because I'm sure our listeners will lap this up. And hopefully they'll maybe sign up and push themselves. It's not about the time you run, it's about the time you have. I love that. That'll stay with me. Stephen.
Good.
Yes, no, Karen, it's been really, really fun last hour and a well, actually,
I'm sorry, because
don't apologise. Don't apologise. That's the last thing we want you to do. But do you know what? I love the fact that it all really started because you were kind of diving about Runners World forums and fetch everyone's and making pals in the running community that have become a huge part of your life, it sounds, but probably played a big part in the direction of your life as well.
I can safely say running saved my life, or the running community saved my life. I can safely say I've been through some incredibly dark points in my life, which I didn't want to touch on tonight, but the running community saved my life. They pulled me out of some very dark places, and for that I'll be eternally grateful. So I'll never be able to stop giving back, to be fair.
There we go. think that sums it up. It came across quite clear as well, Karen. So yeah, and thank you for giving up your time to speak to us. And
No, thank you for being interested enough to want to chat.